Hi there. I'd like to talk with you today about one of my favorite authors, maybe my favorite author. I first encountered his writing as a college student when I was studying philosophy. And I had declared a philosophy major because I was really interested in asking the big questions. Why is there something rather than nothing? What is the meaning of life? And the school where I was studying philosophy had an analytic philosophy department. So rather than asking, why is there something rather than nothing, and what is the meaning of life, I wound up spending a lot of time quibbling about the difference between endurance and perdurance, and whether you could take a ship apart and put it back together and have it be the same ship, and these kinds of questions, which, while interesting and perhaps in some way relevant to those big questions, felt really dry, really not what I thought I was going to be doing. And so when I read this author for the first time, I was so refreshed and pleasantly surprised that someone who flies under the heading of philosopher cared about those big questions and cared about them passionately, and moreover had a really interesting and creative way of exploring those questions. I'm talking, of course, about Søren Kierkegaard, or as you might know him or not, Kierkegaard. Called by some the Danish doctor of dread, this is the guy who invented angst as we know it. His very name, Kierkegaard, means in Danish graveyard, with all the spooky connotations that carries in English. And this compilation of his most quotable tidbits, compiled by the Bruderhof, is aptly called Provocations. And so in honor of Kierkegaard's 207th birthday this week, I'd like to read to you from his parable of the wild goose. There was once a wild goose. In the autumn, about the time for migration, it became aware of some tame geese. It became enamored by them, thought it was a shame to fly away from them, and hoped to win them over so that they would decide to go along with it on the flight. To that end, the wild goose became involved with them in every possible way. It tried to entice them to rise a little higher, and then again a little higher in their flight, that they might, if possible, accompany it in the flight, saved from the wretched, mediocre life of waddling around on the earth as respectable, tame geese. At first, the tame geese thought it very entertaining and liked the wild goose. But soon, they became very tired of it, drove it away with sharp words, censured it as a visionary fool devoid of experience and wisdom. Alas, unfortunately, the wild goose had become so involved with the tame geese that they had gradually gained power over it. Their opinion meant something to it. And gradually, the wild goose became a tame goose. In a certain sense, there was something admirable about what the wild goose wanted. Nevertheless, it was a mistake, for, this is the law, a tame goose never becomes a wild goose, but a wild goose can certainly become a tame goose. If what the wild goose tried to do is to be commended in any way, then it must, above all, watch out for one thing, that it hold on to itself. As soon as it notices that the tame geese have any kind of power over it, then away, away in migratory flight. Christianity is not exactly like this. True, a Christian who is under the Spirit is as different from the ordinary man as the wild goose is from the tame goose. But Christianity teaches conversion, what a person can become in life. Consequently, there is always a hope that a tame goose might become a wild goose. Therefore, Christians must remain with them, these tame geese, but only with one thing in mind: wanting to win them for the transformation. But for heaven's sake, watch out for one thing. As soon as you see that the tame geese begin to have power over you, away, away in migratory flight, so that it does not all end with your becoming like a tame goose, blissfully sunk in wretched mediocrity. Of course, Kierkegaard was a Christian. And Kierkegaard was aware that tame geese are raised for the slaughter. And while their lives are respectable, and while they're used to having their opinions coveted, their end is ultimately an unhappy one. The transformation that the wild goose longs to see in his tame neighbors is a transformation that results in the freedom to fly and a freedom to escape that sad fate. In our class on Jesus and the ethics of the kingdom, we've been exploring the relationship between the church and the world. As you think about how to be church away from Rosedale, away from this little community where our opinions maybe reinforce a certain kind of wildness in you, I urge you to keep hold of yourselves. I urge you to keep hold of the kingdom vision and of your identity in Christ. And I urge you to keep hold of that passion which so motivated Kierkegaard and so motivated this wild goose to seek transformation for his neighbors.